Here's the Predator 69731 overhead valve vertical shaft engine on the Ariens. In another video I cut the shaft shorter on it. Here I have it mounted. You can put the engine on either way. I've got it so you pull the pull cord backwards. I might have to undo the band here on the throttle to get the throttle cable to reach. If I put it on reversed, the throttle cable will reach a little bit easier, but then I'll be in the front when I'm pulling the start, which is a little bit more goofy. Here I've got a pair of channel locks just barely gripping the hub of this, and I'm just torquing this down to get it. It's got a grade 5 bolt. Doesn't have to be too tight. And then here are the 3 self-tapping screws. Again, the stock motor from Harbor Freight, the pulley sticks out too far. So there's 2 options. One is you can shim up the motor with a bunch of washers. I want to say it's 3/4 of an inch. I had to cut off. The exact number's in a different video, but it's, think about 0.7 inches, say. So you'd have to put bolts and washers through here. Or you use the stock motor and cut the shaft off 7/10 so that the pulley's at the right Z height with respect to the other here on the front. So I cut the shaft off with the cutting wheel, then this will go on here. If you don't want to do that, you can bias it up and then probably just put 5/16 inch bolts through there. With a bunch of washers would work too. On a Briggs it was on this. The variant is that this shaft here is about 7/10 of an inch shorter. And so I cut this off with the cutting wheel so that the pulley's at the right height. See this length here, 3.2 inches. For the PTO shaft length is shorter. On the Briggs it's for the string trimmer. This is a model 946150. Got this several years ago and hit something and screwed up the, I think the cam jumped a gear on it. It wasn't the flywheel. This is the dead engine over here. And it has a severe mechanical issue. I pulled the flywheel on it, put a new key on it. The key wasn't sheared, started it up. Still was way out of time. So I just put a whole new engine. This is a flathead actually. When I bought this, some of them were flatheads and some were overhead valves, and I got the flathead one because it was about 50 bucks cheaper because they were getting rid of them. And since it wasn't the key on the flywheel, I'm fairly sure the only other thing can be is the plastic gear in there. I think it jumped a tooth. And that's the standard Predator 173C3 vertical shaft engine. This is a little bit smaller. It's a 173. I think the old one was about a 190, but this is actually a flathead, and this is an overhead valve, so it should be about the same, probably roughly the same power. Okay, these bolts here, there's 8 of them. Actually, they're screws because you tighten them with the head. They're self-tapped into the plate. These are the 4 holes on either side, and those are tapped. So when I change this, I'm going to have to put the Predator logo on here. That's critical. Once this is in place, it's going to cover up where you see the pulley is. So if your belt is in bad shape, you probably want to replace the belt before you cover all this up, because I think you have to pull this off to get the belt off. Okay, got one bolt in. That was kind of hard to do. And once you get one in, you can get one on the other side. And these down here, you have to use an open-end wrench because the frame here is in the way. Once you get one in, you can get the other ones in a lot easier because you just rotate it around to get it lined up. You can grab this whole thing and move it back and forth and line the hole up. As you can see, you can't get the wrench in here. So all those are open-end wrench deals. Unless you get one of those wazoo things that goes around it that spins, it's got no height. That's what you need to stick on that. That's probably what they use in production. Now I got one bolt in the other side. I had to kind of move the deck a whole bunch to get it to line up. It's a little bit pain in the butt. Okay, I got all four of these on the left side in. This one I had to take off because I was cross-threading it. And now they're all in. They still take a good while to put in with an open-end wrench or a socketed one on here. Excuse me, it's a 9/16. I don't know what I was saying 5 for. It just takes a little bit of screwing around to get them in there. And they must use a automatic deal and get them started. And they wouldn't want to mess this much time to put all those things on. The right side over here seems like it has a little bit more space to get in there on those four than on the left. I know with my ratchet here, I can't get the ratchet in several of these until I get them in there deep enough that I've got enough clearance on there. Unless you use a very short socket. And I wouldn't tighten any of these up until you've got them all in, just so that you can move the deck around. The orange thing is respect the black to get it lined up. The wrench is busted. This one that works, I need a shorter socket on there. It worked on these two. This little guy's better, but ratchet's on its last days. Just using old wrench works pretty well. Okay, got all 8 of those screws on with the 9/16 inch heads. I think they're 3/8. This one here was, even though I had it threaded right, was really tough to tighten. It's almost like they got it cross-threaded in the factory and they just ran it through. The other one wanted to started crooked and I had to change it. Now here's the throttle piece. I'm going to undo that band there because I got a little bit more slack to hook this up to the throttle connection. It's just shy of not making it, but there's some extra length here so it'll be hanging more in space. And this engine doesn't have any oil in it yet, I'm pretty sure. That's why I've been able to flip it over. That's the ST622. There's a bunch of different versions of these things since they got different engines. Mine came with the old flathead Briggs. Right there. This is the catcher for craps, the reduced amount of shrapnel. You can just undo these and move this over a little bit, remount it. think me turning this upside down a bunch of times I've broken this off. So I'm just going to go through and move this over and not buy a new one for right now. Just make sure the sucker starts. Now, get the air filter off. It can be done. It's a little bit more wheels sort of in the way, but it can be pulled out of there. Or you can just take the wheel off. It might be easier to do. So you can sneak it out of there. Okay, put some Mobile 1 in there. It's just something I happen to have. Used a funnel here, so it gets around the wheel pretty well. There was a tag on this thing, there was no oil. It's over here somewhere. But I've got the oil set where it needs to be because I've never cranked this up yet. Disconnected the throttle piece temporarily so I could put this in perpendicular to the wire and get the throttle piece on here. And one thing that's kind of a screw up is that this motor, unlike the older ones, got a engine brake arm. So I'm going to have to get something and pull this tight. This is the more the don't sue me type engine. I've just snugged this by hand till I get this set up right where it needs to be. This is on the full slow. And then, oh, this is over here to the turtle rabbit. I was able to get this air filter in and out without taking the tire off, but it's a little bit kind of a close fit. And I'm not sure if this has got a choke on it or not. I know it's got a bulb thing. Sometimes it pull this off and squirt some ether in there to get some of these started on a cold day. Started on the third pull. I got on there to pull the brake on. That's just a piece of steel brake line or something I used. Pull this back. The problem is it turns this off. And I'll probably end up putting a shorting piece between here and there and short it out like the old days. Not the best if you're in a humid area, but this particular mower doesn't fall under the guide that it needs an engine like this with the brake, because the bail here controls the pulley in the bottom. So the stock engine doesn't have a brake because it's not required, because the whole bottom is sealed. See, if you let go of the bail here, the engine's still running, but the cutting whip stops because of the clutch. So for the 1982 safety thing, this re-engine here doesn't have the brake. This brake is actually redundant, and there's not a brake arm on here except the clutch for the pulley. So to start this thing, you got to hook this gizmo I got in from another YouTuber, which I'll credit here, and then you have to undo that to turn it off, or you can manually just short the plug to the frame with a metal clip like they did 50 years ago.